Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most infamous agricultural initiatives in recent history, the Vrede Dairy Project. We're going to break down exactly how it was supposed to work and, well, how the whole shebang spectacularly unraveled.
Okay, let's ground ourselves right away in the official source material. We're focusing on Part V, Volume 1 of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. You know, the Zondo Commission Report. We aren't dealing in rumors or speculation today. No way. Every single thing we cover in this explainer is drawn directly from the findings, the timelines, and the financial records detailed in these very pages. Think of it like an autopsy of a failure, documented line by official investigators. We're going to dissect exactly how a massive government project went entirely off the rails.
And we're kicking things off with a staggering question, one that really defines this entire narrative. How on earth does a company with absolutely zero agricultural background secure a massive farming deal? Keep this paradox in the back of your mind as we move through the timeline, because it's the central mystery of the project. But, to truly grasp the scale of this disaster, we first have to understand the initial promise. Because believe it or not, on paper, the original idea actually made a ton of sense.
Right, so let's look at that noble intent. It all started with a strategy called Mohoma Mobung, which was aimed at keeping agricultural wealth locked right inside the Free State. The term translates from Sesotho to plow into the soil. It's a really powerful concept, right? The Free State has massive agricultural potential, but historically they were just producing raw goods, trucking them all the way out to provinces like Gauteng or KwaZulu-Natal to be processed, and then essentially buying them back at a premium. Mohoma Mobung was the strategy to fix that. The goal was to literally plow those investments back into the local soil and create these massive agri-centered hubs right there in the province.
And the Vrede Dairy Project? That was positioned as the absolute crown jewel of this new strategy. The promises they made to the community were fantastic. We're talking about alleviating poverty in the town of Vrede, creating 150 brand new local jobs, and directly empowering local black farmers who were told, straight up, that they'd be the primary beneficiaries of this whole dairy hub. Over a 5-year period, the provincial government planned to invest hundreds of millions of rand to make this a reality. It sounded like a massive win for local development, a total game changer for the region for sure. So who was driving this? The project was spearheaded by two key figures in the Free State provincial government. The member of the Executive Council for Agriculture, Moza Benzi-Zwane, who unveiled the strategy back in late 2011, and his head of department, Peter Mbana Thabethe. Now, according to the Commission's report, Thabethe had recently arrived in the province with a very high level of confidence. Actually, scratch that, maybe a bit too high, because investigators literally noted this extreme confidence might have blinded him to the basic need to, comply with regulatory frameworks. But hey, they had huge ambitions for the province, and they wanted to move fast.
And man, did that ambition translate into astonishing speed, especially for government work. In March 2012, Thabethe travels to India. By April, a memorandum of understanding is signed with an Indian dairy company called Paris. By May, a formal offer is on the table. And by early June, a final massive financial agreement is officially signed. I mean, going from an initial scouting trip to a finalized mega contract in just over 3 months, that is almost unheard of in the public sector. The momentum was just incredible.
But here's where the story takes a massive, sharp turn. The chosen implementing agent, the company meant to partner with the government to build this state-of-the-art dairy farm, was a company called Estina. Now, you'd probably think Estina was some kind of agricultural giant, right? Well, they weren't. In fact, they were registered for Commercial Industrial Services Sales and Support. Basically, they were an IT company. They had absolutely zero experience or expertise in the agricultural sector. No due diligence was done by the department before appointing them. They literally just handed the keys to a dairy farm over to a tech support firm.
So the really crucial points here is the sheer scale of the financial commitment drawn up in that incredibly rushed June 2012 agreement. The total funding requirement for the project was calculated at a breathtaking 570 million rand, including VAT. Just let that number sink in for a second. The agreement proposed that Estina would provide 228 million rand, while the Department of Agriculture would grant 342 million rand, paid out in these massive tranches of 114 million rand per year. Taxpayer money was just flowing, in huge volumes, into a partnership with an IT company to run a dairy farm.
Let's actually talk about the government's massive shopping list for this project. They budgeted 149 million rand for a milk plant, another 60 million for dairy manufacturing. Then there's a completely baffling 40 million rand just for intellectual property working capital. But listen to the final item on the budget, the actual cows. 1,000 dairy cows, the entire core asset of a working dairy farm, were costed at just 5 million rand.
The cows made up less than 1% of the total 570 million rand budget. It is completely absurd.
But hold on, because here is the ultimate twist in the Estina tale. Remember how they were supposed to be this joint partner bringing over 200 million rand in capital to the table? Well, the day before the Department of Agriculture paid Estina their first tranche of 30 million rand, Estina's bank account held a balance of exactly 16 rand. Not 16 million, 16 rand. That was the actual financial standing of the government's hand-picked implementing agent.
This stark reality really reveals the systemic failure at the heart of this project. It's not just some funny little administrative oversight. It's a profound breakdown of governance. See, Treasury Regulation 8.4 is incredibly clear. Before you transfer millions in public funds to any entity, you absolutely must obtain written assurance that they implement effective and transparent financial management. But in reality, the department completely bypassed this basic due diligence. They ignored the strict rules designed to protect us and handed public funds over to a shell company with 16 rand to its name and absolutely no agricultural track record.
And yet, despite all these glaring red flags, the project was aggressively pushed forward. On June 13, 2012, the Provincial Executive Council approved the proposal. Just 2 days later, on June 15th, a 30 million rand payout was requested. And according to the evidence, Emick Zwane directly instructed the immediate processing of this payment. The speed of the cash moving out the door was honestly just as astonishing as that initial signing of the contracts.
So, you're probably asking, why the rush? Why the total disregard for protocol? Well, the Commission's report points to a much deeper network of influence. The investigation highlights a reported meeting on May 5, 2012, between the head of department, Mr. Vrede, and Mr. Tony Gupta at the infamous Saxonwold Address. The Commission firmly concluded that this whole endeavor was heavily influenced by the Gupta family. They were advancing private business interests under the highly convenient disguise of public empowerment and agricultural development. The Commission summarized the entire ordeal with these exact, devastating words. It wasn't some grand agricultural revolution for the Free State. It was, quote, a complete disaster, and the total disbursed to Estina was 280 million rand of taxpayers' money, end quote. That original, localized vision of Mohomo Mabung, it was entirely hijacked. The money was spent, the contracts were eventually canceled, but the severe damage was already done to the public purse.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty devastating thought. When the safeguards we rely on fail so spectacularly, when basic regulations are just ignored and millions are transferred to empty bank accounts, who truly pays the price? It's not just the taxpayer in some broad, abstract sense. It's the community of Vrede. It's the 150 people who never got those promised jobs, and the local farmers who are robbed of the empowerment they were absolutely guaranteed. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning and always keep asking where the money really goes.